like to call this meeting of the Common Council of the City of Elkhorn to order. It's July 15th, 2024 at 5:30. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Tim Schroeder,
Here.
Peter Harvey,
Here.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Here.
Ron Dunwoody,
Here.
Scott McClory,
Here.
Ken Minell is absent, and Kurt Harkness.
Yes, here.
All right. Public comment. I'm guessing there's some folks here for public comment. I've got to read my little statement here, and then anyone that'd like to speak can. There's a 3-minute limit on speaking. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. The public may speak on any item of city concern, whether or not that topic is included on this agenda. However, if the topic does not pertain to an item listed on the council agenda, the council is not permitted to address or discuss the matter during this meeting. Under open meeting laws, the council must notice an item on the agenda to allow discussion on that matter. If the council is not permitted to discuss your concerns, your comments will be considered and may be placed on a future agenda for further discussion. Who would like to go first on public comment? Carol?
Okay, I'm Carol Young from 14 and a half Prescott. I'm here to talk about the removal of the crossing on South Wisconsin Street. Yes, there is a train using those tracks at least 4 or 5 times a week. And yes, there's a lot of car traffic that uses the South Wisconsin Street crossing. There are 6 apartment complexes on South Wisconsin with 40 units and 19 houses, some multifamily. It's difficult to use Clark Street to Lincoln Street due to the volume of traffic on South Lincoln Street. Pulling out into traffic is and can be dangerous. It could use a 3-way stop. And then with the new housing going in on South Lincoln, it will only be more difficult, and school buses will be out soon. Going down Deer Road is not a solution either, still pulling out onto 67 into traffic. Going to work this morning, it took me 4 minutes to get off of Clark onto Lincoln Street. Temporary closure of the tracks on Marsh Road is not a solution either. Then where would the train go, and how did those people get to their homes? And getting off Clark Street to Lincoln during the school year is almost impossible. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else for public comment?
Sure.
My name's David Crosby. I live on 39 Monica Drive. And I got some questions about this closing on the South Wisconsin Street crossing. First of all, is that the South Wisconsin Street crossing data provided by Creekside Development, as quoted in the Independent. By whom was this collected? Secondly, what is the date of this traffic study? I use Wisconsin Street crossing twice a day for about the last 30 years. And since the Creekside development was approved, there's not been any traffic study equipment that's been set up at that crossing. According to the Independent article, Adam makes no mention of a McKinsey lane crossing study, and I'd like to know why. Because there's a comparison there that's not being made. Further, Adam stated McKinsey Lane Crossing provides key access to Business Park from East Centralia Street. What's the basis for this claim? The platted 365 homes development that's at the end of Deer Road will be forced to use the Deer-Lincoln intersection if the Wisconsin crossing is terminated. Has this been planned for? Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when this development is done. Because I've already seen the suits down there spying that property. About 20 years ago, the South Wisconsin Street crossing was used for Highway 67 north-south traffic while the South Lincoln crossing was being rebuilt. What's the plan for next time?
Thanks, thanks, Dave.
Scott Wilson Farm Meats. We have 30 employees that come here every day, come down that road of Wisconsin Street. So it'll be a dead end is what it's looking like. And turning left onto 67 from Clark is always very difficult. Where on the other side of the street, on Jones' side, they just turn right into the street instead of trying to cross 2 lanes. And I don't know, I haven't heard about the traffic count. You have a traffic count for 60 days or 90 days on that road? So.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I tell? I want to provide those coat feathers. I am Amber. I'm Scott's daughter at Wilson Farm Meats, but we're trying to get more involved with the community, and it's going to be really hard. And I know this is very selfish of me to ask, but to try to get more involved with the community that's right up the street, Wisconsin, it would just really hinder. And I know there's a lot of new customers that are just hearing about us for the first time. So, Pete, I appreciate the heads up, you coming by, but it would really hurt our traffic, and it would really hurt people that are trying to build lives around here. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Sue Wallum, and I have Depot Lane Storage, which is right behind Wilson Farm Meats. I didn't write anything because I need more information. Based on the article in the paper, I didn't quite understand the logistics, and it said that you guys had tried, and I appreciate that, but that it's up to the railroad because they have certain standards. Now, I have 100 storage units there, plus I have units that contractors rent from me. And I know watching that road, I use that road many times a day going over those railroad tracks. And there's a lot of businesses down on Nathan Lane that use that road. And there's also emergency vehicles there. And I agree with everything that they wrote up. And at the end of Deer Road, I know that there's a huge development that somebody's going to buy into, and that's going to change everything. And my concern is, how do we think future? Because we have so much growth happening, and it's not just the homes and the roads, but it's also the infrastructure. You guys have a lot going on. But what, if you want something done, how high up can we go? Can we go to a senator? Can we go to the railroad? Can we go to somebody else? Because this may be a temporary fix, but what about the future? And I'd be willing to participate or call anybody or do what I need to. I think you guys are good. I don't mean that negatively, but I just think we can resolve this for the community because there is a lot of business down there. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So,
Hi, I'm Pete Bose. I own the apartments down on South Wisconsin Street, 40 units down there, as well as a couple of other homes. And I'm just here to voice my opinion for my tenants' concerns. Several times a week, we get emergency calls down there. As Joel could attest to, that we get ambulance calls. I have a lot of elderly people that live down there. I'm just concerned that by closing that, it's going to just cut off our access. And like Sue said about the left turn out of Clark Street, or the trying to get out of Centralia, makes it difficult. It's a dangerous intersection. You try to get out at certain times of the day, you just can't do it. And emergency calls, seconds matter. It's what I've always been told. Seconds matter, and I'm concerned about a lot of those folks that are down there. So I just wanted to let everybody know that my tenants are concerned. Many of them can't be here, don't have the wherewithal to get here, but that's what's happening down on our end of the road. So appreciate your guys' concern and anything you can do to help us address that. Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Again, anyone public comment? Uh, Public comment is closed. We've got the consent agenda, the council meeting minutes for July 1st, 2024, and a discussion and possible decision regarding pay application number 2 from Wilcom Excavating and Grading for the 2024 East Centralia Street Reconstruction Project in the amount of $704,329.72. Can we put these together, or would you like to separate them?
Together's fine.
Any discussion, any questions?
I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness.
I heard her. We put these both together, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes. Bills payable. Got consideration recommendation to pay, do we have that amount here? Bills in the amount of $2,823,154.76.
I'll make the motion to pay the bills in the amount stated.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
Yes.
Peter Harvey.
Yes.
Motion passes. We've got a presentation from Riley Hutter, CPA Manager of Clifton, Larson and Allen, for an overview of the 2023 audit. Hi, Riley.
So I'll just start with an introduction of myself and what I'm going to start with here on my presentation. So I'm Riley Hutter. I'm a manager from CLA. I've been the in-charge auditor for the city for the last 2 years now. So what I'm going to do is kind of jump right into our independent auditor's report, and we're going to kind of page through that on the screens you have, and then throughout the book here, but I'll kind of take you through that as I go. So I'm going to start on page 1. That's the independent auditor's report. And they'll have the page numbers at the bottom if you... Okay, so yeah, right here. So the independent auditor's report is kind of our conclusion, for the whole audit. So what we do is we take a risk-based approach for the audit. We don't look at every single little transaction, but we take a risk-based approach, and we evaluate materiality to come up with our audit opinion. So this first paragraph here is our audit opinion, and that is a clean, unmodified audit opinion, which is what you've received in the past years, and it's the highest audit opinion we can give, and that is what you should be looking for each year. So I'd like to note that in a paragraph below here, these are your financial statements. So it's the city's financial statements. Management is responsible for these financial statements, and they're responsible for the preparation and the fair presentation of the financial statements. And management accepts responsibility for that through the signing of the representation letter, which is kind of at the back of the packet here. But that's what the representation letter is if you come across that. On the next page here, page 2, goes over the auditor's responsibilities of the financial statements. And that's kind of what I just touched on, is we evaluate with our risk-based approach through everything, and offer our opinion and give assurance on the financial statements. We also attain an understanding of the city's internal controls. We gather information, obtain an understanding, and then offer not an opinion, but we gather our understanding of internal controls, and then we have another report towards the end here that I'll go over that kind of compiles our findings and things like that throughout the audit. So I will jump into the financial statements here, getting into the numbers. If you want to turn to page 8. So page 8 is the governmental funds balance sheet. There's a lot of different numbers on here, but the ones that I'm going to focus on are the fund balance. So this page lays out the city's, all the major funds that the city has: general fund, debt service, capital projects, ambulance, and then there's another column here that totals up non-major funds that I'll touch on a little later too. But I wanted to highlight the unassigned general fund balance. It's towards the bottom here. It's about 4.2 million. This number we like to evaluate year over year, within a range of general fund expenditures. So if you take general fund unassigned fund balance of that 4.2 million, and then on a subsequent page, which I can show you where that's coming from, and general fund expenditures, your percentage of unassigned fund balance is about 59%. So that's a key metric that we look at. Typically, recommended range is 20 to 35%. So you're well above that, which means you have a very healthy general fund balance, which is a good thing. Looking back at some historical data on that number and metric, I think last year was 46%. Year before that, it was about 51%. So it fluctuates up and down a little bit based on timing of capital projects and things like that. But it has remained kind of in that consistent range, showing you have a very healthy general fund balance. And sometimes our recommended range, that 20 to 35% isn't always a perfect number. Each organization is different, but when you stay above that, it allows you some financial flexibility, with inflation and things like that, where you don't have to short-term borrow. If you were getting down lower, there might be situations at different times of the year where you'd have to short-term borrow, but you're above that point and don't have to worry about that, which is a good thing to have. I will point out here that the general fund balance did increase from prior year, and I believe so did debt service, ambulance, and all the other non-major governmental funds. The only one that decreased was capital projects, and that's expected with all the different capital projects you had going on and are outstanding. So I'll turn next here to page 10. So page 10 is where I got that total expenditure number of the 7.3 million. That's I guess what I was evaluating within that percentage range that I was just discussing. But also here at the bottom of the page, you can see the change in fund balance from year over year. You can see it, increases across the board, except for capital projects, which went down about 136,000. Any questions so far? Feel free to interrupt me at any time if you do.
How does our unassigned fund balance, what's the percentage of that to our total liabilities?
For general fund, I guess I don't have that calculation off the top of my head, but your total liabilities in the general fund are 300,000. And then you also have deferred inflows of resources, which is, property taxes levied for subsequent year, but it's still that 4.2 million is a little over that, or about the same if you combine.
And so how much money has the city borrowed? How much do we have out in borrowed money?
I can cover that. I'm gonna cover that in a little bit. Is
That's
that
what
okay?
I'm getting to.
Okay.
What do we borrowed, and what do we have in our pocket?
If you, well, I can turn back to page 6. If you go back to page 6 for governmental activities, you'll see the long-term obligations. Under long-term obligations, you will, in the liability section, you'll see the amounts due within 1 year, due within more than 1 year. So that's about 32 million in debt for your governmental funds. Which we have a footnote a little bit that I can show you where it breaks it out into more detail, and you can see kind of what makes that up, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I will move on then to page 14 and 15. So 14 and 15 are your proprietary funds balance sheet and statement of net position. That's going to be your sewer utility, water utility, electric utility, and solid waste. I'd like to point out, I think the important things to look at here are your cash balances within the utilities. Cash balances did decrease, but that was due to an advance, I believe, from sewer, or
Electric.
Yep, electric and sewer. And I believe that was paid back shortly after early 2024. So you'll see a fluctuation there, but that was more of a temporary thing that will stick out on this if you're comparing year over year.
Question, you know, the money that, the tax money revenue that non-for-profits do not pay, do we have some kind of total on how much money the city has out in those obligations? Or that we've given out in those kind of it's not any part of these documents, it's a question that
So can you explain that again? Non-for-profits?
Okay, I've got a church, and their taxes are $10,000 a year, and they come into town and we say, you don't have to pay $10,000 a year, we're just gonna put it up, and we'll have somebody else pay for it. My question is how much of those type of situations do we have, what's the total obligation that we're moving from the non-for-profits to the taxpayers?
So I think I see what you're saying. I don't think that's not gonna be reflected in here. I don't think
We
that.
can cut it. I didn't think so, but
Yeah.
Since I had you here, I've been wanting to ask you the question for a while now.
Okay, yeah, I don't have that number.
Okay.
And that might be something that the city would have to try to calculate or look into, but I don't know, I don't have that quantified, so. Okay, continuing on page 15, this is, again, you'll see, I guess, the advance between the utility funds that I just wanted to point out, which will be different from last year. But again, that was paid early 2024. If you move on to page 16 and 17, I think this is one of the most important things to look at, from a utility standpoint, is the cash flow. And you can see the change in your cash balances from year to year. Each utility has a net cash provided by operating activities, which is what you want to be seeing. And then they did cash decrease slightly again due to the advance. One item I also wanted to point out here is the interest received. It was a good year for interest income, and just based on rates, so that definitely helps the utility and city as well. And I think that's everything I wanted to cover from the actual financial statements. I'll move into the footnotes now. So if you would like to turn to page 32, I'm going to skip a few notes in there. Mostly what it covers is your standard accounting policies, things that haven't really changed from prior years. A lot of wording in there, you know, on the different policies that the city has. But on page 32, this is a custodial credit risk note, and I think it's important. It highlights your cash balances and the cash in excess of FDIC insurance. The city does have all of their excess cash balance insured, whether it's through collateralized securities or pledging within the financial institutions. So there is $12 million worth of excess cash there, but it's all fully insured, which is important, and I think that's, you know, that's good cash management. But so just wanted to point that out. On page 37, if we move to that, page 37 is kind of what we discussed earlier with the long-term obligations. So this is going to detail all of your outstanding debt as of year end between the governmental funds and the proprietary funds. So right here on note E, you'll see the total long-term obligations as of year end is 33 million. I think that kind of hopefully breaks out or answers your question there, Kurt. Kind of shows the different bonds and notes outstanding. And then the business type activities, which is your proprietary funds, has $15 million outstanding in long-term general obligations. On the next page here on 38, again, it just breaks out the maturity schedules. So when your debt payments will be coming due and what will be owed over the next, you know, next 10 to 15 years until 2042. It breaks that out by year.
Do we have any unfunded retirement liabilities?
I do not believe so. You'll have, there is a net pension liability for WRS, but that's the state funded plan. The city has fully funded that, and that's
Okay.
But you will see a net pension liability, and that's what that is.
Thank you.
And again, yeah, page 39, long-term obligations. This just breaks out by different types of bonds that you have. Revenue bonds, there's 11 million outstanding in revenue bonds. So I will move on from debt to page 53. Page 53 breaks out your fund balance between the different categories. So your fund balance is made up of a few different categories: non-spendable, which is prepaid items; restricted, which is items that are restricted for a specific purpose, whether it's library operations, park dedication. You can see all of those below, but it breaks out your restricted fund balance there. And then on page 54, we continue going with the committed fund balances and then the assigned fund balances. And just kind of shows you a breakdown of what is all outstanding there in the fund balance and what purposes it's either assigned, restricted, or committed for. So after that, I'll move on to page 68. Page 68 totals all of your non-major funds. These funds were totaled up into a larger column earlier in the financial statements that we covered. But again, you can see the detail of each individual fund here in the back of these statements. Fluctuations all over across the board, nothing too major. I think vehicle replacement really increased this year, but everything else is fairly minimal. Good with that. So next, I'm going to move into our internal report on internal controls and financial reporting. So this report is where we gather our understanding of the internal controls and report on any findings or any internal control, issues or anything that comes up throughout the audit. So we do not express an opinion on this. It is more a compilation of results. So if we turn to page 72, this is where we start listing out findings. So finding number 1 is material adjustments to the city's financial records. This is a repeat finding from last year, but what it's saying is if there's any material adjustments that are found as a part of the audit process, they were adjusted through the audit process, but we're required to disclose a finding for that. And I think I will like to say that even though there is this finding, the audit over the last 2 years has improved greatly, and I want to stress that it's great to see the progress over the past few years, and I think Corey and the staff do a really good job of trying to analyze all the journal entries that are made and try to make changes on how they can better make those journal entries as a part of the the finance process throughout the year, and cut down on kind of those year-end journal entries that are made as a part of the audit.
Year-end journal entries, are those cleaning up problems? Is that why they're there?
Some of that is cleanup. I will say that comparing last year to this year, there's much less cleanup to be done. I think there is some work to be done with capital assets. There's probably a little room for improvement there, but you have many capital projects going on. There's a lot that goes into it from the utility side, the finance side, and kind of getting those numbers to jive together with the PSC report, and many different requirements. So that, it does take some time to kind of figure out all of that from an audit standpoint, but I think, we're making progress on how to address those journal entries and how to, make it better going forward.
Is that, would that be, with what you just said, would that go along with the material weakness and internal controls over financial reporting? It sounds like what our staffs aren't accountants.
No, I wouldn't say that. So
I mean, not as an accountant has a certain level of understanding of the words and the double entry system and how things,
Yep.
Is it?
No, I wouldn't say it's that at all. I would just say, as a part of the audit process, so the numbers you're maybe looking at from a board level monthly, as a part of the year end, there may have been a journal entries where we're categorizing something into a different area, or yes. And I would not say that has anything to do with the level of knowledge for the finance staff. I think your finance, Chris and Corey, have done a great job.
No disrespect.
Great job over the years of trying to improve things, and there's a lot there where this is you work to get rid of this finding, but I will say it's common, and I do see it with many of my clients where there are material adjustment findings at year end.
Gotcha.
So.
Well, it looks like you state that the internal controls have been getting better.
Yep. Yes.
So that's.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I will note too. So I'll get to that a little closer here too. So last year, well, I guess I'll skip to that right now. Last year we did have a segregation of duties finding. So last year we had 3 findings. This year, we did get rid of that. So in order to get rid of that finding, that means, you know, the segregation of duties between finance staff, Corey, Chris, you know, they're working to improve all of their processes, segregate as much as they can, you know, and have approval processes, things of that nature, where they've improved upon that so much in the over the past 2 years, where we no longer have that finding this year. So,
News.
yes.
That
Yep.
really is.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then finding number 2 here is very common, preparation of the financial statements. That you'll most likely always see going forward, just due to the fact that Corey would have to prepare this whole document on her own, and the benefits do not outweigh the costs of doing that. So that in that case, this will always be here, and it's very common with probably 90% of the kind of clients
Well,
that I
look at the
work with.
complexity of what the numbers we're trying to put together here. too,
Exactly.
so, yeah.
Yep. So that will always be there, unless the city grows and their finance staff grows. But I doubt that this will go away in the near future. So that highlights all the findings. I guess any other questions at all related to any findings? No. So the last letter here I have is the governance communication letter, and I don't know if you have that one up. It might be a separate document, but it is within your booklets. It's a separate stapled document at the end.
No, that, okay.
And what it does is it discloses anything that governance should be aware of. So he didn't have any new accounting policies, although there was a new GASB standard, GASB 96, for subscription-based IT arrangements. We do evaluate any new audit standards that pop up year over year. So we evaluated that for the city, and it did not apply whether the city didn't have any material items that popped up, or there was nothing that applied to that new standard. We do disclose that there are accounting estimates within your financial statements. So there are estimates for the incurred but not reported insurance reserves. There's an actuarial estimate that is provided each year, but this is us disclosing that we evaluate that and have audited the estimates that are in your financial statements. The second estimate is the allowance for uncollectible accounts related to ambulance billings, and we kind of have an extensive review of ambulance billings and those allowance for uncollectible accounts. On the second page here, there's no difficulties encountered at all throughout the audit process. No uncorrected misstatements. Everything was corrected. And again, that I want to thank Corey and the rest of the finance staff. They're great to work with, and you know, it shows a lot about the city, of the quality of your staff here. This does disclose our corrected misstatements, and those were just material items that were adjusted through the audit process. And a lot of these we have seen in the past and are working to cut down on those and work with Corey on how to get those recorded in the future. There's no disagreements with management, no other issues or audit findings, no significant issues found as a part of the audit process. And then kind of in the back here, we already discussed a lot of this information, but there is graphs if you want to see the unassigned fund balance percentages as a part of expenditures. It does highlight it from 2019 to 2023, if you would like to see kind of the year over year change with respect to that. I think that covers just about everything that I wanted to go over here today. Any other questions?
Oh,
All right.
thank you.
Well, thanks again. Thanks for having me, and thanks again to Corey and the finance staff and Adam. you're all great to work with. So thank you.
Thank you.
We've got the report of city officers. For the mayor's report, I would like to officially appoint the law firm of Pruitt, Ekus, and Gary as the city of Elkhorn's legal advisor, with Elaine Ekus designated as the city attorney, and Tim Pruitt, Chris Gary, and Rebecca Shepro as assistant city attorneys.
Do you need a
And
motion?
I'd be look-
I'll make a motion to approve, appoint.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any questions? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. The city administrator.
Just got a variety of updates here. One, I did want to just preliminarily, I did want to thank Corey for the efforts that she's put in over the last 2 years in trying to get the budget and our tracking better. I know there's a lot of issues, journal entries, as our auditor mentioned, it's been an issue. Corey spent a lot of time in terms of going back and closing out old projects that were, bonds that were outstanding and projects that weren't necessarily clearly tracked, I guess I'd just say. So I do appreciate that, Corey, and also Chris, our new treasurer. He's done a great job. He just started with us last September, and he was a former auditor, so hopefully maybe you'll see even more improvements for the 2024 audit. But I know he did a great job looking at the draft audits that were given by our auditor, and he found a lot of things that could be tweaked and improved. So just want to thank both Chris and Corey for their efforts. Just wanted to thank also the chamber and businesses who donated $2,700 towards the signs for the ATVs and UTVs. So Chris, I saw you in the back. So thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Our water engineer is going to be doing an update in August on kind of where we're at with some of our water projects. So I know that's certainly a matter of interest for the community, and the council. So they have some good updates on that. Wanted to also just and this is more for the community, but let the community know that the county is exploring options for potentially relocating the government center, which is downtown right now. So they did a study, and there was some different, they pretty much looked at 4 or 5 different options. They haven't made any decisions. They had a public works meeting about it in June. I haven't gotten an update on any additional decisions since then. It sounds like they didn't really want to make a decision. But just putting it out there, that's something in their long-term planning. And then lastly, we are going to be working on getting our new building inspection contract hopefully finalized by the next meeting. I know our current building inspector actually today just gave us 30-day notice, which we do, which is why we're looking for a different building inspector. So those are my updates, unless council has any questions.
Okay, thank you, Adam. We've got reports of city boards and community partners, fire advisory. I don't see the chief here, so no report there. Library.
So good evening. The big news is the library, with the help of city grant writer Katie James, has just submitted a grant proposal for the 2024 Flexible Facilities Grant. The grant is awarded to institutions that can provide need for new and improved facilities, with a particular emphasis on providing safe meeting spaces in the event of a COVID-type incident. To that end, we have included proposals for building improvements such as new HVAC for the library, new heating system, new roofing, and new lighting. In addition, we have proposed construction projects that would create new meeting room space, including a refurbished and rehabilitated basement that would give us more and greater partnership opportunities with some of the county health and human services outreaches, as well as some of our nonprofits like Open Arms Free Clinic and the Job Center. All told, we requested $2.5 million in funds to realize these ideas, and we'll know by October 1st if we've been chosen as a recipient, so fingers crossed, everyone. Also, the new digital sign is up on Wisconsin Street, and I think it looks pretty good, so please drive by and take a look. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Rec advisory.
Yeah, we have no updates.
No updates. Chamber of Commerce. Chris?
Do this one. Good evening. Sorry I wasn't here last month. I had a vacation day. And I emailed and it didn't get to Ken in time. So, as many of you know, we just had a 5-day festival here in Elkhorn, Rib Fest. Attendance was in excess of 100,000 people, even with some cruddy weather late Saturday night and the impeding hot weather that was supposed to be there Sunday. We had record-breaking nights both Wednesday and Friday as far as, and I know it's not always the best gauge, but it's a free event, free parking. So actually somebody standing there taking tickets, it's the calculations is based on beer and soda sales. So, but those were record-breaking sales nights. And as far as I know, Captain, Chief, we had no incidents. We were all good. In June, I think I had mentioned also, we hosted 3 travel writers here in the city of Elkhorn that were staying here in Elkhorn, and they visited many different locations. They enjoyed the White River Trail, the Kettle Moraine. They visited Doosterbecks. They golfed, they had ice cream, and they had coffee and ate at many of our locations. We're waiting for the preliminary reviews and their articles. So once those are, I can share them with you, and you will probably see them in many different articles throughout the Midwest. This was a Midwest travel writers group. The end of this month, on July 27th, will be what some of you would call as our old festival summer. It is kind of transitioned to what we call truck and shuck. So we will have a few food trucks, and we have corn. And then we have 70+ vendors, and we have music, and it's from 11 to 7. That is what is going on. And then the first weekend in August 2nd and 3rd, if you're a country music 80s, 90s enthusiast, we will have Trace Atkins, Winona Judd, and John Michael Montgomery are the things at the Walworth County Fairgrounds. So I encourage.
Wow.
We anticipate the pre-sales and things like that. We're looking at already at 5,000 people that are in attendance, and there's a lot of camping and things that go along with that. So if you have any questions or concerns, let me know.
Thanks, Chris. Our community grant writer, Katie.
I like it when she's got a smile on her face.
It's always because I have good news to report. Good evening, everyone. I'm Katie James, the community grant writer. We had another stellar month for the city of Elkhorn, a little over $100,000 in grants combined between the school district, a new CNC machine in the machining lab, and $50,000 from the U.S. Department of Energy for improvements to some of the facilities. There was a group of us that did trainings with their team, learned an incredible amount about how to operate a commercial facility, and then they gave us $50,000 because they liked our plan so much on how to make those improvements. The one that I wanted to mention is actually in partnership with Chris Clapper and the Chamber of Commerce. And what I'm particularly proud of was we were awarded the AARP Community Innovation Grant Award for $20,000. It's one of the largest in the history of the state of Wisconsin to put toward the dementia-friendly park project next to the Chamber of Commerce building. So a huge kudos to us for that project. They really believe in it, and they believe in it for the city of Elkhorn to help those of us who are over the age of 50 years old. The other thing I wanted to mention to you was that I took the month of June to help the EEDA, or the Elkhorn Economic Development Association, with the revamping of their building improvement grant. The big grant is something that's been in place for the city for about 8 years now. It got a little bit of a facelift. We look at the current conditions of the city and how we could improve that project and how we could best allocate those fundings and distribute it into the city and to our commercial property owners. So any commercial property owner, take a look at that, because we made some great changes, made it easier to access that funding, and made it easier and faster for us to distribute it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to new business. Item A, a discussion and possible decision regarding the Belinsky Harvest Point Villas Specific Implementation Plan Amendment. Who's got this?
I guess I will just jump in and say that and we do have John Donovan here from Belinsky in case you guys have any questions, but pretty much this is a project that Belinsky was looking to do about 2 years ago. They have since decided to revise the plan, pretty much just shrinking the size of the units. Other than that, the development is staying the same. John, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but.
Yeah, just that, we're trying to. Is this on? John Donovan with Belinsky Homes. We're looking at all of our developments throughout Waukesha County, Walworth County, Jefferson County, and trying to see how we can somehow bring a little bit more affordability to most of our single-family and condominium projects. The way we can do that is by using a different building, a little less square footage, that is much more cost-effective to build. So that's what we're planning here. So the buildings themselves are about 118 square feet less. There's a lot more green space that will be between the buildings. We're picking up anywhere from 3 to 8 feet. On the rears, I remember when we got this approved 2.5 years ago that there was a lot of discussion on how tight this project is. And right now it's going to be much wider apart from the buildings and the rear setbacks to the berm to the east. We're looking forward to hopefully starting this if we can get approvals and financing completed early fall. I'm looking at this being a 75 to 90 day turnaround on infrastructure construction. I handle that directly for Belinsky. And then starting, hopefully we can have a couple models within our developers agreement. We are about at 90% of the developers agreement. It was negotiated 2.5 years ago. It really, all it needs is implementation of new plans and new things based on today. So if you have any questions, I'll stay here and wait. Thank you.
Well, I like the fact that you're reducing the cost because housing is absolutely nuts, and increased green space. I really like that.
Thank you.
What's the new square footage? I can't seem to find it.
The new square footage, I'll have it in a second. It's a difference between 1,460 versus 1,342. All of the same services or room dimensions are a little bit different. It's a different plan, but you're still getting 2 bedrooms, you're still getting 2 baths, you're getting a 2-car garage, you're getting 2 extra parking on the slabs. So a lot of it all stays the same. We're reducing our footprint for impervious spaces, almost 800 square feet per building, which is adding to green space.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Thank you.
passes. Thank you. Next item, we've got a discussion, possible decision regarding setting compensation of the municipal court clerk.
So the new municipal judge, Lori Domino, has, as you can see in the council packet, submitted a letter saying that she has appointed Claudia Last, who was the previous court clerk and who retired, will be the new part-time court clerk. So council, you have the responsibility, authority to set the compensation for that position. The request was $25.71 per hour. Which is the midpoint of the pay grade for that position. It is a part-time position now rather than when it used to be a full-time position. So it is more than what she was earning previously, but when she retired, she was getting $23.75 per hour. So it's $2 per hour more. But we are not paying for health insurance because obviously it's part-time now. And even though theoretically it's part-time, it could be budgeted for part-time, it's unclear whether she will be actually even working, let's say 20 hours a week. It may not actually even end up being that much, so maybe even less than a 20-hour per week position. So in terms of budgeting for this year, it's not a budget issue because we're not paying health insurance, and the position's been vacant already for a little while, so it's not a budget problem for us, and we'll be saving money going forward.
I'll make the motion to approve the compensation at the amount stated
Second.
for part-time position.
Good motion and a second. Any questions or discussion?
I guess I'm not tracking this properly. She's already making 23 whatever. And then the pay increase would be a $2 an hour raise, basically, for the same position that she used to have when she was full-time, but now she's part-time and she's getting a $2 raise. Am I tracking that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? We've got a motion and a second. Should this be a roll call?
I would do it because it's financial.
Yeah, a roll call vote, please.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
No.
Scott McClory,
No.
Kurt Harkness.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item C, a discussion and possible decision regarding proposed resolution 2422, a resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing for the 2024 sanitary sewer rehabilitation project.
This is a sort of more of just a procedural resolution. The council previously approved doing the I&I mitigation project for Basin 2. In order to do that, we are applying for a Clean Water Fund loan as part of that. They say that if you're going to incur any expenses for that project, which we technically are because the project's ongoing, and the bonds for that and the loan won't actually close until the end of the year, you just have to sign this, approve this resolution allowing us to basically, we incur the cost now, we use existing city funds to pay for it, which actually sort of goes to the point that our auditor mentioned earlier about why you want to have you want to have a good amount of cash on hand to be able to help cover these short-term loan situations. But basically, the expenses that we'd be paying now, we'd be able to reimburse ourselves with the loan when it closes in December or January timeframe.
Okay, thank you.
I make a motion to approve resolution 24-22.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
It's a roll call.
I guess we should have a roll call vote on this.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Discussion and possible decision regarding accepting a proposal and drafting a contract for a needs analysis study for the fire station in response to the city's RFP. Did everyone take a look at that in their packet?
Yeah, I was unable to get the actual file of all the actual things. I just saw the summaries.
Okay. Yeah, fortunately, we received 8 proposals from different firms, and the top, really, all of them were qualified, and we went through and did an internal review with staff, which had several questions, and we ranked them accordingly, and I supplied the point breakdown here at the bottom. So this kind of ranks the top 3 firms. Bray Architects at 20.5, SEH at 19.5, FGM at 17.5. There was, this did not consider cost. The costs were in the proposals. I can go back and look at them. I believe that, actually I sent that summary out to you guys in the email. You may have gotten that summary. So I could probably pull that up real quick. But
If you could, please.
yeah, sure, I could do that. Just give me 1 second. See if I can find it real quick.
Hey, Matt, I've got those numbers handy if you want.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Bray came in at $36,500. And they were number 1. SEH came in at $31,540, so it was $5,000 less. And then the third place on Matt's ranking,
FGM.
FGM, came in at $107,500. So there was a very significant difference between the first two and the third one. Looking at all of them, most of them were in the $20,000 to $30,000 range. So the 107 from FGM was definitely an outlier. Although there was another outlier at 67,005 from McMahon, but most of them were generally in the same range. So we have pretty good confidence that the 107 is an outlier. And so.
So Matt, based on, number one was $5,000 more than number two. We're talking about $5,000. Is it really that much difference to go with number two?
I mean, I think either one would be fine, honestly. Bray just had, I think the reason, and there's other stats that took a look at it too that are here. It's just that they had a lot of experience with fire departments. SEH does too, not as much as Bray.
Have we worked with any Bray or SEH before?
I've worked with SEH, not in this capacity, but in other capacities I have. And I did do a reference check on Bray. I didn't hear back anything from SEH, but Delavan built a fire station recently with Bray, and Mark Wendorf said they did a great job for him. He was very impressed with them. So.
And we budgeted 40, correct? If I
What's
remember
that?
correctly, we budgeted 40, up to 40,000.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so they're both within that range.
Yep.
I think just from being in the fire service and going through some fire station remodels and not so much studies, my role, but it seems like an architecture firm that has more history with doing firehouses doesn't make mistakes that inconvenience the fire department personnel long term.
So your opinion is Bray would probably be a little bit better?
If they have more experience in it, yeah.
So it's worth the $5,000?
I believe so.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion to approve that? So I'd make a motion to approve Bray at how much?
What?
36.5.
Yeah, I think is what, if you want to do that tonight, otherwise we could just move more towards, getting a contract from them. This is just a proposal right now, so once we meet with them, we could, chat more about scope of services and see if anything else comes out of that discussion.
So then directing city staff to work on doing a contract. There you go.
I'll second. We got a motion and a second. Any questions? Should this be a roll call too? Or does just approval? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We've got discussion and possible decision regarding proposed engagement agreement with Pruitt, Ekus, and Gary to provide city attorney services. Did everyone see the proposed agreement?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions?
Just a quick comment. I know in my council memo, I said that the proposed contract mirrors the proposal we got from PEG, which it does generally speaking. The only caveat is I would just want to recognize that they did agree to reduce their rate for municipal prosecutions from the 210 to 185. So that is one change from what was in their initial proposal.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So
thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Now we've got a discussion and possible decision regarding the proposed resolution 2423, a resolution authorizing the city of Elkhorn to petition the Wisconsin Office of the Commissioner of Railroads to close a public closing at South Wisconsin Street, a public street located west of South Lincoln Street. If we wanted to reopen this for discussion, do we have a person that voted yes? How do we go about that? Or can we just discuss it, the resolution?
I guess my thought is that you could just discuss the resolution because this was discussed at the last meeting, but it was intended to give staff direction for preparing this resolution, which we would have to have because we have to have formal authorization to submit a petition. So this isn't necessarily reopening and,
Okay.
it's a different item of new business.
Can I make a new motion on this? Off
Well,
off that, or?
we might want to have a discussion on it.
Right, perfect. All right, thank you.
So I would ask that we get more detail on really understanding impacts of closing Mackenzie, and if we really can, because at the last meeting, we talked about that there was a business impact, but do we know for sure that those tracks are used past Mackenzie or not? Something confirmed in writing saying, hey, those tracks are not going to be needed, because I know we had a long conversation about that. And we all thought there was, but let's get confirmation, because if those tracks aren't being used beyond Mackenzie, goes back to what we originally talked about last time, which will help satisfy the concerns of the community, which we all had originally.
I did get that confirmation this last week, that they have to use the tracks in order to, they currently have a customer who's west of those tracks, but in order for them to use that spur, they have to use the
They
full,
have to go beyond.
so.
I went down and I looked at the crossing in those tracks, and I took a picture of the crossing at the Mackenzie Road there. The rail lines are packed with sand, so there's been no train traffic there, I believe, for a while. And then as I looked, is it east? I looked east just past the spur. There's a stop sign, and I'm guessing, not a great judge at different distance, but I would say 150 feet to the east, there's a stop sign and a rail lock on the rail line itself. So if the company that's east of there is being serviced currently, they're being serviced without them going past that rail lock and that stop sign.
All I can
Wasn't
say-
part of the, I'm sorry, wasn't part, the rail line, the existence of the rail line was because it's a benefit to the company that the line goes to? I mean, wasn't that part of our conversation about that? I mean, even though it's not being used, the person with the commercial property down there would obviously get more with having rail access. So, I mean, even though it's not being used, is that the other reason why we're even talking about whether it's being used or not?
Yeah, if it's okay, I just would say that, we talked about it at the last meeting too, but I don't think the railroad is gonna give up any any tracks that they have out there just because of the use. During our discussions, it didn't seem like that was their position. I mean,
all I can say is like the email I got back from them said, yes, the trains need the ability to cross Mackenzie Lane to access the rail spur.
So
let's close Mackenzie then.
So back to, we're in the process of updating that whole road. What if we did close that so any traffic would have to go around? And I know the intent was to have a bike lane to go to the Babe Man Park through there, connect everything, so therefore it won't connect. Could you have a passenger, not a car, over that crossing if we close Mackenzie? Is there a way to do a personal cross?
Are you saying a bike path,
A bike path?
pedestrian?
Yeah, thank you,
crossing?
yeah. And is that possible, or is that considered one of the vehicle ones that they say we can't have any more of?
I could comment on that if you'd like, Adam. I know when we did have conversations with the railway, we did ask about leaving a pedestrian access on Wisconsin, and it was no. So that's at that time, that's when we said, well, if that's the case, if we have to close sidewalk too, then we would just have to put sidewalk on Clark, because we want to obviously maintain access. So I'm sure it's going to be the same thing on there, that they probably wouldn't allow any sort of crossing, my opinion. We haven't, we can have that conversation with them about Mackenzie. But
I think we should,
I'm just going off of my, our past conversation with them.
I understand, but maybe bring it up to them, the concerns of the community and what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to, grow our industrial park and also take care of our community at the same time, and still have train tracks go through our through our community.
I'd like to see a side-by-side comparison. If we close Marsh, or we close Mackenzie, or we close the one over by Wisconsin, over by Wilson's. I'd like to see what impacts, this is how many residences, this is how many businesses, this is the vehicular traffic impacts. I'd like more of that, you know, because, and I guess legally, and I'm assuming Adam or Elaine could elaborate on this, but there must be some Wisconsin statute that governs the fact that the railroad commission can just dictate to the city, guess what, you got to close. I mean, that's the beginning and the end of it, right? I mean, we don't really have any recourse. So for those of you that weren't at the last meeting, so we're gonna have to close one of them, correct?
Well, the Office of the Commissioner of the Railroad is the one that decides whether you can have a crossing or whether a crossing should be closed.
Right.
The problem is the railroad has, you know, can either make it, they can support your application to the state or they can oppose it. And if they support it, then it expedites the process and obviously makes it more likely the state's going to do it.
Right.
If it becomes a contested process, then it'll be lengthier, you know, more expensive and chance that it ends up being denied. So, but yeah, so it's not really, you know, the railroad has told us it is their policy that if you want to get a new crossing, you have to close a crossing. And I mean, Matt and I, in our conversations with them, emphasize that none of these are good options, but that's what their policy is. So that's why we're in the situation we are.
Did you guys get a sense, and if you can't comment on this, just say so, but did you get a sense in your negotiations with the commission that they were, for lack of a better term, more inclined or more in favor of closing X, Y, or Z versus A, B, or C? Because I understand you said this last time we met. If they support it, it's pretty much greenlit and it's gonna go through, but if they, no, we really want you to close this one, then they could really put up a fight against us.
Yeah, I mean,
Paraphrasing, but that's the gist of it.
Well, I'd like to add the numbers. I looked up the Wisconsin Railroad site this weekend, and that particular intersection, the last time a car count was made on that intersection was 1996. The numbers were 450 cars a year, where Wisconsin's streets got 400 cars a day going across it. So what I don't understand is why the railroad wouldn't have or shouldn't have said, listen, this crossing has got so much less traffic, so much less of an impact, we should just close this one. Now, because it's under construction now, I mean, I think it's a benefit. We just put some dirt in front of it and close it. Because it doesn't make sense to close Wisconsin Avenue for a lot of reasons. And not just all these people standing out here and all the people they know about it. It's too busy of an intersection. There's too much existing business that is using that crossing, that needs that crossing to stay off of Lincoln. And again, when the other project is finished, it's just gonna be worse. And this other road is so far out of the picture. Well, and the other thing with the railroad is when you look at their map, the crossing there isn't even marked as a crossing. So the railroad's, what would I say, interest in this site can't be much because there hasn't been a car count since '96. And then they put on the map where every other crossing's got you know that there's a crossing there. This one, they didn't even bother putting it on the map. So I would say, how much concern do they really have about that crossing? And we should move to close that instead of Wisconsin.
I agree with Alderman Harkness on this. At this point, can I make a motion so you can keep moving forward with the crossing for the new subdivision and not slow you down and we'll just have the vote fall where it may? I'd like to make a motion that we keep Wisconsin Avenue open and close McKenzie.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Yeah, I think we need to get more data before we start making decisions, is what we were trying to talk about before. That's the whole
I agree.
purpose, is get more detail, because we are impacting something or someone, one way or another. Let's get more detail before we just ramrod it through.
Because next week, the people from McKenzie are gonna be here saying, why'd you close my crossing? Right?
450 cars a year compared to 400 cars a day.
For a point of procedure, Mayor, and if you wanted to stop the process now, a motion to table would then take precedence over the motion to close McKenzie versus, what was the other one?
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, sorry. I have the map in front of me and I couldn't find it. So
So a
that would
motion
be
to table?
procedurally
Okay.
a motion to table if someone was so inclined to want to make that, to allow staff to review it further and bring it back to.
I want to make a
the body.
motion to
Whoa, whoa,
table.
whoa, you can't. We've already got a motion and a second on the floor.
A motion to table or postpone to a date certain would take precedence over the motion that's on the table. And if the body wants to postpone that, then that would take precedence. If it got a second, you would have to vote on that. And then if that fails, you go back to your original motion.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to table to get more details before we make any decisions.
And I'll second that.
So now we've got a motion to table and a second. Any discussion?
450 cars per year compared to 400 cars per day.
But that doesn't mean that that's the right place to close it.
We've already talked about the other ones. We can't close
We've
Mars.
got a- we've
We
got a
can't- We
motion.
don't want to close Wisconsin and the other one, and we need the other one too. This one we're speaking about has got the least impact.
The motion is to table to get more details to validate everything that you're saying and what everybody else is saying. We gotta make decisions based on current facts, not opinions. That is the purpose of the motion to table until we get more details, which is what we have been talking about.
I have a question. Does the motion to table does that stop this motion that we voted on last week to close Wisconsin? All right,
Yep.
perfect.
It stops everything, so we can figure out what's going on.
Thank you.
My question is, what's our timetable like for this? When do we need to close one of these crossings? When does Creekside want to start the new crossing? Where are we at with that? Does anyone know that?
I mean, obviously, they've been pushing us to get going on it, because, under our development agreement with them, they can't open any of the buildings until you have 2 access points to the project. We've been told it can take 6 months to a year at least to get through the review process through the state, and that's assuming you have assuming it's not uncontested. So, I should say, assuming it's not contested, they're saying 6 months to a year, sort of best case scenario. And I know the challenge, I think, is going to be for doing a study on McKenzie is right now it's under construction. So, Matt, I mean, when is McKenzie slated to be open again?
We were just looking at the schedule. I think with paving August 20.
Yeah, fully open September 25th, paving September 9th. So, yeah, I would say it would have to be into October before you could actually do a traffic count on the new roadway.
But we also, when we were talked about doing Centralia, when we're talking about going between concrete and blacktop, we did a study then. Can we look back at that detail and see if we have information that involves McKenzie?
Sure. I don't know that we did a traffic count.
Well, we were doing some things to dictate whether we're going to spend a lot of money on concrete or not so much money on blacktop.
Right.
So, and the other thing, just real quick, is Creekside, they do have a temporary second access point that's supposed to go along Jones to be the short-term gap, so they can keep going.
I'm sorry. Well, the challenge is going to be that they, yes, it's supposed to be temporary, but it can't be, that can't be used to provide, that can only be used for construction in and out of the site. It can't be used for providing access to residents who are living in the buildings.
I understand
So-
at this point, I'm just saying it, because getting this right is important. And if we got to wait another month to do it, to get the right details, and if it takes us a little bit longer, if it takes us 2 months, let's get it right. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to sit out here and explain to everybody why we did this or that, and then this week they're upset, next week the other one's upset, and the third week's the other. Let's get it right. The best that we can. This is not a 911, where we got to do CPR or they're dead. in my opinion.
Okay, we've got a motion to table on the floor. Can we get a roll call vote, just so we know where we're at?
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
No.
Motion passes. And now we need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
We gotta do a roll call.
Thank you all for coming and sharing your opinions on the crossing.
Do a roll call.
By the way, I'm Dave Crosby, I'm Crosby Auto Repair.
No, we're doing
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we were just gonna do that.
It's on the website.
I'll go back to the gallery.
Yeah, Peter, we lost one.
Should I do?
I think we're gonna have a roll call vote.
You want me just to leave now? We need you all to step out, please, so we can go into closed session. Thank you.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
This is for a closed session?
Yes.
Yes.
Peter Harvey.
Yeah.
Motion passes. We're going into closed session.
Reconvene in open session at 6:59 PM.
We've got a discussion and possible decision regarding the offer to purchase of public property, tax key YVSE 00003D1. Do we have a motion, please?
Would you like me to recap that for framing up your motion? Okay. So you have the offer to purchase in front of you, and based on the discussion, you would request some revisions to that. Number one would be that the buyer would need to combine the parcel with the adjacent parcel, so it's under common ownership, all under one parcel number. Second, strike lines 83 to 100 to be consistent with past offers. Third, to add the same note that the transfer return fee exempt criteria applies to the city. Fourth, that you would want to have the right to repurchase this parcel within 3 years, consistent with past offers to purchase for this development area. And fourth, that the binding acceptance would need to be updated because it came in a little bit late to us because that was July 2nd. So those would be the 5 pieces that would need to be updated. And then you can authorize approval and execution by your mayor and clerk.
That's the motion.
Okay.
With all those details.
I'll second. Got a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
No.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Peter Harvey.
Yes.
Motion passes. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned.